Morning show here on CTT. We are live. Thank you so much for staying with us. And if you're just joining us, we're definitely happy to have you as well. We are continuing our focus on gender-based violence, domestic violence, and therefore, at this time, we're going to be speaking with Onika Mars, the head of Women of Substance NGO. And it is the mission of Women of Substance to build community and self-awareness and to assist the victims of domestic violence and abuse, while collaborating with all stakeholders to prevent all forms of violence. So let's welcome the head of Women of Substance, Onika Mars. Good morning to you, Onika.
Hi, good morning, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me.
It's
Happy
my
Monday.
pleasure to have you. Let's talk about what has been happening the last couple of weeks, where we're seeing people, this time, it seems as if that the action is sustained longer. We're seeing the caravans, we're seeing the motorcades, we're seeing the protests, we're seeing the candlelight vigils. Does this give you hope that things will change, that gender-based violence, that whatever we need to do to treat with gender-based violence will happen going forward?
Yes, definitely, Natalie, because the idea is for the conversation to continue 24/7, 365. So it's good that we're seeing a lot of candlelight vigils, a lot of motorcades, and it tells us that there is hope. People are actually fed up of what is happening. People are saying, you know what, enough is enough. And we ought to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. So we ought to keep the conversations going. So it gives me lots of hope.
Now, last year we lost over 100 women to domestic violence. This year already, I think we're at number 5 or 6. What do you think it is this time around, though? Why people are responding the way they're responding?
Because people are actually fed up, Natalie. And for some, it has hit home that, you know what, this is a relative, this is a sister, this is a daughter, this is a friend, this is a classmate, you know. So people are actually ramping up the discussions. So people are really tired and fed up.
When you look at what has been happening, especially with Andrea Barrett and Ashanti Riley and the population's response, do you believe that apart from the population response that we are doing the right things, whether it's a state, whether it's NGOs, that we are doing the right thing at this point to treat with the issue, or is it just the population responding that we're seeing?
Well, we know normally there are a lot of emotional responses when things happen. And what we tend to do as a people is, you know, based on emotions, we respond, we react. So as NGOs and as the state, I think we are doing a lot, but there's more. There's room for improvement on the national level as far as laws are concerned. And as NGOs, we need to do more because, you know, as with Women of Substance, I mean, we are creating the awareness about domestic violence and abuse and continuing the much needed conversations through our communities.
Now, I know that Women of Substance has been trying to bring that awareness through its Purple Bench initiative. Tell us about that.
Okay, so Women of Substance is actually using a 3-pronged approach, okay, as it relates to education, awareness, and ultimately change. Now, we have launched a Purple Bench campaign in Tobago last November 2020. We've also launched our Purple Bench approach in Trinidad last Monday, which was on International Women's Day. And the idea of the Purple Bench initiative is to create that awareness in communities, because our objective is to paint existing benches purple and brand them, because we want to raise the awareness about domestic violence and abuse, because what we know is that in every community, persons can identify someone or a few women and children and even men who have been affected by domestic violence and abuse.
Right.
So we have launched in Tobago, as I said. We have launched in Arima, and we continue to paint those benches in communities throughout Arima.
No.
One may ask why we chose to launch in Arima. Arima, I once lived in Arima, and Malabar Arima is where I had my experience. So I thought it fit to
Yeah.
have the launch in Arima. 2 Saturdays ago, we also painted 17 benches purple in the Chaguanas area throughout like 6 different recreational parks in 6 different communities. And it has been an awesome response because we had a lot of men coming out and showing their willingness to be a part of the conversation. And I've had one guy say to me, Miss Mars, we have painted 8 benches in our park. There are 16 benches. We chose to paint 8. So I remember asking him, why 8? And he said, Miss Mars, listen, we want to send a strong message to the community and to Trinidad and Tobago by extension that we are not going to tolerate domestic violence and abuse in our community.
Right. So the benches, they do serve to bring some level of education and awareness to domestic violence and associating issues. But in terms of change, though, we see the government, well, Cabinet has approved pepper spray legislation, and that is supposed to be coming. But what else can the state and NGOs do to protect women from domestic violence?
We need to be our brothers and sisters keeper, and also make available and make known the resources that are available so that victims and survivors can access. Because what we have found is that persons really are not aware of the resources that are available. So the campaign to promote that knowledge is really, really important. The Coalition Against Domestic Violence, I am an organization of which I'm a board member. We offer counseling, free counseling to survivors and victims, and we have been promoting that. Our organization, Women of Substance, also provide free counseling and support systems through our support group, our domestic violence support group, Sit and Chat with Onika Mars, which takes place in a safe environment, and survivors and victims meet in that environment and share our experiences with each other.
Ms. Mars, you are a survivor of domestic violence, and what I want from you is, tell me, when you were going through it, what were the things you thought were critical that you needed at that point to help you to get through the situation? Because I think a lot of times we have, as you said, systems in place. One, we don't know where the resources are. We don't know how to access them. But for you, when you were going through it, what are the critical things you thought you needed at that time, the kind of support you thought you needed?
I needed moral support, and at that time I really didn't know. I wasn't aware of the resources that were available. But what I had was a great deal of support, because I remember specifically one of my cousins, Dr. Wendell Wallace, who is a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. I remember calling him very often at 2, 3 a.m. And every time I called him, I would ask him, cuz, are you awake? And he would say yes. And he would listen. And, we joke about it now because, looking back, when we talk about it, he would be like, Onika, did you really think that I was awake at 2 or 3 a.m.? But the fact that he never said, no, I am sleeping whenever I called and asked if he was awake, that was critical, because that support was really, 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 really needed.
So definitely need some moral support. What about economic and financial help? Because one of the things we've learned is that a lot of people in abusive situations is because of economic circumstances.
Okay, I agree that that is needed, because economic empowerment is very important, as most victims and survivors are unemployed and depend wholly and solely on their partners. So because of that, what we found is that most times when persons brave the muster the strength and the courage to leave that relationship, they go back because of the fact that they are dependent and not they are dependent on their partners. So we really need to encourage that economic empowerment. I remember in my situation, I was gainfully employed. I had a very good job, but yet I stayed.
Right. So there is a direct correlation then between the circumstances of these women and the relationships that they're in that are abusive.
Definitely, because you know, most times, Natalie, persons may ask, why did you not leave at the first experience? And you know, we ask women, persons ask women a lot of times, why didn't you just leave, or why don't you just leave? The thing is that it is easier said than done, because at the end of the day, your situation is sort of normalized because there is some sort of emotional attachment to your partner, because of course most times the abuse doesn't start at the onset of the relationship. Most times the partner appear very normal, your relationship appear very loving. So, you know, you're intimately involved and yet there's emotional attachment. So it's easier to say, it's easy to say, why don't you just leave? But it is easier said than done.
And a lot of times we focus on what we can do for the women, whether it's to empower them financially, you know, give them that counseling, you know, provide those shelters. But what of the men? What is it that we need to do for the men? So because most of the time they are the perpetrators of the violence.
What we need to do is create safe spaces for our men. And I know in our case, Women of Substance do a lot of referrals. There are organizations that are working specifically with men. For example, Carryman, Caribbean Male Action Network, Kevin Liverpool and Peter Wellande. And they offer a lot of support to our men. Because what we need to understand is we cannot continue to educate and empower our women and not focus on our men. Because as you said, as you rightfully said, the higher percentage of perpetrators are males. And if we empower our women and leave our men, the cycle would continue. So we need to pay particular attention to our men and offer that support. Some resocialization need to take place also, because we need to teach our young men, teach our boys, teach our males how to express emotions. We need to teach them you know, different skills, the way they deal with anger, and not, you know, a lot of times we tell our young men, it is not okay to cry. You know, if you hear a little boy crying, you know, you would say to him, don't cry, big man, don't cry, wapne a sissy or soft man. We need to change the way we address situations like those, because it is okay to express emotions as a male, and we need to teach them that from an early stage.
All right, Onika, we do have to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing with us this morning, and all the best to Women of Substance as you continue to bring awareness and education about domestic violence.
Thank you so much for having me, Natalie. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Onika Mars, their head of Women of Substance, is speaking to us, and she says we need to re-socialize our men, you know, because if we continue just looking at the women and not at the men, we'll just keep spinning top in mud, and I agree. All right, we take a break and we'll be back with you.